Montano, as well as my CFO, Mr. Norman White. Last May, we stood, the three of us, stood before you and spoke to you in regards to the financial challenges that we were facing as a city and as a result of the pandemic. COVID-19 has not been like any other challenges that we've seen in the city of New Orleans, but we have been through some together, as we will get through this. Throughout this pandemic and the course of our administration, we have proven to be responsible stewards of taxpayer funds as well as financial resources. We have had to make some very painful decisions, simply necessary by the realities that we were faced with, including decisions that were made in Baton Rouge, quite frankly, that diluted and diverted much needed CARES Act funding to this city. With still $70 million in expenses that were approved, yet have not been reimbursed to the city of New Orleans. But there is now some relief that is on the way, and thanks to the American Rescue Plan. And we are going to be, and we are very intentional about how we will allocate these resources. We know that we have urgent needs, of course, throughout multiple sectors in our community, in our city, and absolutely within city government. We are at the very beginning of this process, and we do not have this money in hand yet. So it's very important for you all, the public, to understand that. But we are taking a very hard look, as we have, and looking at the full recovery of this city through a lens of a 3 to 5 year period in terms of a timeline as we recover from this tremendous revenue loss created to our local economy. You just can't make it up, the impact. The next step, as we have indicated and articulated over, is that working with the U.S. Treasury Department to issue guidance as they're promulgating rules and regulations around how these dollars can be spent. And we're going to make sure that we follow those guidelines, again, as we've demonstrated we can do effectively when it comes to spending federal resources. Federal funding, of course, at this scale often comes with strings attached. Again, we're accustomed to following compliance guidelines at that federal level, and we're waiting, of course, for them to be promulgated, but we're preparing ourselves to act. The funding estimates are promising. It's really exciting. And we are extremely optimistic about what the city of New Orleans will receive. Listen, we fought hard. And quite frankly, I've been in many rooms, having many conversations, pushing for what we know that we needed at the local level. And since the onset of this crisis, we have made countless efforts to get direct funding to the city of New Orleans, but working again in partnership and collaboration with mayors across the United States of America that have been impacted just like our city. I have aligned myself, again, with fellow mayors and leaders across the country, again, who are in similar positions like the city of New Orleans, and collectively, our voices were heard. And I am so grateful to our federal partners, including our Speaker Pelosi, of course, our former Congressman Cedric Richmond, as well as our President, President Biden, as well, again, as our Vice President Harris, who worked, again, listening to us to make this happen for not only the city of New Orleans, but for cities across the United States of America. The immediate priority, and as you've heard us say, as we have said all along, will be to return the city of New Orleans, our workforce, to its fullest strength possible. And we know that that is the start of lifting furloughs in our city. Again, wanting to restore operations and city services that our people desperately need. And I am convinced that as we move through and looking at the full recovery of this city, that we will be in a position to do some transformational things in this city that really spoke to those disparity gaps that we had in place prior to and at the face of COVID. I've instructed my team to repay the certificate of indebtedness that that we had to make sure that we took that loan out. Again, you don't wait until you run out of gas to find out how you're going to fill that tank up. We did not wait. We were one of the first cities in the United States of America to take this lead in March of 2020. Again, thinking about the fiscal health of the city of New Orleans. These were emergency funds set up, again, with the flexibility to use in terms of cash flow and making sure that we would need and have what we needed to operate our city in the midst and throughout this crisis. Throughout this administration, we have demonstrated again a strong fiscal management, and thank you to the leadership that stands with me and works with me. We not even being here a year and a half in, and we were able to see our credit rating again increase and improve. And in the midst of a pandemic, facing again these challenges, we were not downgraded, as we saw some of our cities across the country were faced with that downgrade, but not us. So we're wanting to continue to be fiscally smart, prudent in our practices, every step of the way. These funds are vitally needed and will be allocated towards the best and the highest use for our city, for our people, and to ensure a full recovery from this pandemic. Again, looking 3 to 5 years out, right? We still have a long way to go. Vaccinations are the key. So I'm going to continue to urge you to get vaccinated, and we will always provide you with information as it relates to that. We are ready. We have a strong demonstrated track record, as I've mentioned, and experience in managing, deploying, and allocating federal resources. My administration has demonstrated that every step of the way, even coming in the door with federal money that was allocated to the city in 2016 with only 1% of those dollars spent. But with this administration, less than 2 years out, we're up to about 12% spending that money, again, being diligent. And this is tied to infrastructure in this city, unprecedented infrastructure improvements that have been made, not only in 2020, but in 2021 will be over $700 million plus. When we look at 2022, we are on a great trajectory and path, especially with this infusion of these federal dollars that we intend to receive. Last week, again, I spoke with my fellow mayors across the country, as I'm always tied to, who are working to establish what we call stimulus command centers. We're already, in terms of our city, we have systems in place and processes in place, again, to administer these dollars. So we're in a great position to move this money efficiently and responsibly, but it will not happen overnight. So managing the level of expectations is very necessary. And I want to, one, ensure you, and by doing so, I'm creating a stimulus command task force by executive order to analyze and to guide how we will utilize these resources, how the money will move, and how these resources will be spent in our city, but again, looking comprehensively. The task force will be made up of my advisory panel that I created from the onset of this, that have been working with me and the administration over the past year. So they're in a great position, great leadership throughout this city, who will serve as a part of this stimulus command task force. I'm also adding additional stakeholders to this, and of course, representation from the New Orleans City Council that will come by way of our at-large members participating on this task force. We will be also working with committees that have been structured and have been working and laboring not only through this pandemic, but focusing again on a strong recovery of this city. So I want you to know, again, that we're prepared, we're excited. Our task force, they will work closely, again, at examining the entire package, that 1.9 trillion in terms of our American Rescue Plan and nearly 600 pages of legislation. We know that there are dedicated funding streams for many different things, of course, for restaurant and bars and small businesses and infrastructure and housing and education, for health care, you name it. So we're wanting to not just be narrowly focused on what city government will receive directly, but what the city of New Orleans will receive holistically. And we're wanting to make sure that these resources are leveraged effectively, again, to meet the needs of our recovery and also do some transformational things that we have been needing as it relates to equity, as well as social justice and public safety and all these things that we know that we can do better. And it's at the heart of it is our people. I'm deeply proud of all of our people and their strength that they've demonstrated and shown in the face of this challenging year. And as we move through 2021, I just cannot thank you all enough, whether it's, your phone calls, your emails, your handwritten cards, handwritten letters, just words of support. It just matters, and that's what I tell my people. Thank you so much, because it really does matter. You can't get through this alone. And even, as my folks say, and every time I talk with TD, when we gonna do this? When we gonna do that? Well, TD is saying that we're going to make sure that we focus on our people, our workforce, our growth sectors, our industries, and doing things that we have been needing to do in this city for a mighty long time. But first, it starts with basic city services, getting the strength of government back operating and functioning, and that is the first step. So with that, I'm going to sign this executive order right now, and then I'm going to turn it over to our CAO, Gilbert Montano, and we'll take it from there. Ms. LaToya. Yes, madam. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ma'am. Gilbert.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, for your leadership. It is a good day for us, certainly, and thank you, Norman, for your leadership as well. I think that we have some positive optimism moving forward toward the course of the next several fiscal years. And really, that's what I want to highlight, most importantly, as we are receiving these funds, is the 3 to 5 year time period that the mayor mentioned, and really trying to instigate those guardrails that are absolutely going to be necessary. You'll remember last March we sat here and discussed on the deficit side, the 3 to 5 year period, as we looked at the outcomes and the outlook for the city of New Orleans, and to make sure that we're thinking toward the future to ensure that we had the resources for today to get us through tomorrow so that we can have continuous operations. And it's exactly the same in the converse. As we receive this money, we have to be very thoughtful and be very selective on how we're implementing some of these specific appropriations, because we know that revenue is not going to come back at its full force tomorrow or maybe even the next year. And we have to be prepared, because the last thing the city wants to encounter is another situation where we have to put more employees on furloughs or make other hard and drastic decisions. We are comfortable at this point to think and understand that the amount of dollars provided for us is sufficient, and we're very grateful for the amount provided so that we can continue those operations and fully restore city services moving forward. There is some little bit of question that I'll try to explain as far as the $375 million. That is the number that we have seen reported for New Orleans, as well as the parish and the city portion. Now, as the mayor said, we've had this discussion before over the first CARES Act. We really want to see the absolute rules and regulations promulgated from the Treasury Department that then will enforce how those dollars can be utilized and leveraged so that we can provide the services or recoup some of the services that we have. And in order to do that, we certainly have to wait and be patient over the course of the next 30 to 60 days. I think the Stimulus Command Center the mayor has instigated and developed is a vital piece to have multiple stakeholders at the table as we're disseminating such a vast amount of dollars. And when we say vast amount of dollars, I really want to punctuate and emphasize that this is not new money to the city. We have to treasure back over the course of the last year and really look at the denominator of that $375 million and what that means from a deficit perspective. And you're not just looking at the revenue that you lost over the period of that year, you're also looking at the future revenue that we have projected to lose because of the COVID restrictions and some of the other related issues centered around the COVID pandemic. And lastly, want to ensure that we had lost opportunities. So dollars, for example, in close to $50 million that came from Mahara's one-time payment that we had to use to plug portions of our budget, those were lost opportunity dollars in the sense they could and would have gone somewhere else. So you factor all of those different pieces of revenue sources, and then you get what potentially could be the denominator, which is completely it's not completely unknown, but there's pieces that still have to have a little bit more time to understand that final number. But it's just not 375 as a solid number. There's a lot of nuances on how we specifically project our overall deficit. So I don't try to be overly complicated on that, but it is a nuanced dynamic that I try to explain to the best of my ability. Other than that, and without some of the more complexities, we're excited moving forward with this money. We have a charge to be fiscally responsible as we have been over the course of the administration. We will maintain that, and we think we have the right folks at the table to help guide some of those decisions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you, Gilbert. And Norm, anything to add? You're good. And so, Ms. LaToya, at this time, we'll just go to Q&A.
Mayor Cantrell, I have a couple of questions, just to make sure. How much has the city lost to date estimated, and are we expected to lose in the coming months into 2022?
Right. I think Gilbert just really summed it up for you. You're looking for a specific number, right? And that number fluctuates.
Is there an estimate? An estimated revenue loss for the city?
Yeah, I'm not boxing us in at all. You know, I want to make sure, as Gilbert just articulated, right, the nuances even around it. So we know, as it relates to how we've had to plug our budget, how we've had to go on furloughs, you know, how we lost that $50 million in 2020, even $100 million in terms of our deficit and having to fill that gap for 2021. But it's a moving target just based on the losses that we continue to have. We're not out of this now. We're not out yet.
How much money in loans has the city taken in, and how much have been repaid?
Well, in terms of loans, you remember the certificate of indebtedness was $50 million. Okay, and so what we have to repay, well, making sure that we repay that, and that's what we're going to do. That's what I've instructed my team to do. We don't want to carry any debt unnecessarily. And we want to make sure that we continue to demonstrate to even our rating agencies that we're being fiscally sound, fiscally proven, because we do not want our city to be downgraded. And especially when we have seen the real impacts of having a great credit rating. One case in point is just how we're able to allow bond sales to go even further for this city. And it was, we expected that the credit rating would be good for us, but man, we're able to do an additional $20+ million of investment on capital investment because we're fiscally sound. So we want to stay there. And we understand that, you know, as we're looking at that 3 to 5 and looking at recovery and not boxing ourselves in, it demonstrates to those agencies we're doing the right thing. Anything to add? Oh, I don't want to.
If you recall back,
Come to the
when we started this, we actually had approval for $100 million. As we began to put programs in place and saving strategies, we brought that or reduced it to $50 million. So $50 million we took in. Large part, one of the reasons why we did was to protect our our disaster fund. We wanted to make sure we had $31 million set aside for any natural disaster that we needed to respond to. With that being said, that money is still in the bank. We have not used it. Our strategies have worked, and now that this relief package is coming in, we can now afford to pay every dollar back. The only additional costs associated with this will be interest costs and what we call closing fees that this recovery money should reimburse us for.
So you're hoping the funding from the Recovery Act can
Well,
repay that, I'm assuming?
Well, the $50 million is still there, so we'll return that. The interest cost of holding the money plus closing costs will be repaid back with a reimbursement method from this particular stimulus package.
Two questions. One, what's the timeline for any changes on the current furlough situation? I guess the money's going to be out within 60 days, right? So.
We do anticipate that the money will be out within 60 days, given the promulgation of rules and regs that we want to make sure that we're very, clear on. As it relates to moving out of furloughs, actually, the memo was prepared now, and after this press conference, we'll be moving forward to do so.
So furloughs are ended today?
I will be submitting my memo instructing the CAO. It will come from the CAO that will remove furloughs from our people. And it'll be effective, is that Sunday?
Saturday at midnight.
Saturday at
So
midnight.
the next pay period.
Yeah.
And there had been talk about trying to find some way to replace lost wages for city employees. Is that in this memo? Is there still a discussion about that?
Well, as you know, from the start of this and having to move our people to furloughs, which was a tough decision, but it was very much necessary. In doing so, I made sure that we also submitted the necessary paperwork to the Civil Service Commission that in the event, right, we're in a position to, that we would have already in place the mechanisms to do that. The missing component right now are the resources. So what we are waiting for is a clear understanding of the guidelines and rules and regs associated with the stimulus package. And once we have clear lines on that, we'll make a decision based on what our options will be at that time.
And apologies, one more. The advisory task force, can you just explain a little bit more how that's going to work and what their role will be and actually, are they going to actually decide on projects? Are they going to, how will that?
Right, so the stimulus command task force will assist really, the administration as it relates. And it's not just the administration, but there are dedicated funding streams, right, on many different levels, not just what's coming to the city of New Orleans directly. And so I'm going to be leaning on my command task force to ensure that we're leveraging the resources effectively across many different sectors throughout the city. That does include the city government as well, but it's not limited to just the city. Working with, for example, we know that the school system is in line to receive resources that are going to come from the state, well, from the federal government to the state, and also directly could be to CMOs or the system. We're wanting to make sure that the New Orleans Public Schools leadership is embedded, and at the table in this command center and working with us side by side as they have been throughout this pandemic. And so the advisory panel, and you know who those individuals are, they represent many different sectors, of course, the business community, small businesses, hospitality industry, STEM within our community, of course, education, many different individuals. But I'm going to be adding additional stakeholders to the command task force. That will be one I could tell you would be the business council, the chair of the business council, looking at making sure that the Black Chamber, Urban League, other stakeholders will have a seat at the table, as we move through the recovery of this city. We have a generational economic development plan in place. We have a recovery plan that is in place, and it's going to be working with leaders through this command task force to make sure that we're executing appropriately, but in a manner that is equitable, as well as not only dealing with immediate needs, but just forecasting out the 3 to 5 year period and how we can be transformational with these resources that are coming our way. So it's an unprecedented time. It's an exciting time for us to collectively plan not only for our recovery, but for how this city is better off for our people in the future.
Last question, WD issue.
I just had one quick question. Today I interviewed a bakery owner in Gentilly, desperate for help. Really wanted to know when could she see some help. If you could talk to some of the people that just want to know when could they see a little bit of help from this package. Like I said, I know 30 to 60 days out.
Well, I mean, you know, right? You know better than I. We're waiting again at the federal level, not only for the promulgation of the rules, but also the disbursement. Some of these disbursements will be going directly to business owners like the one that you mentioned. So not all flowing, again, directly to city government, but businesses are in a position to receive direct allocation from the federal government. I would say, you get your hands on that package. It goes from paycheck protection programs, as you know, that was done with CARES and hit the ground to our people, but it's not limited there. Economic injury, disaster loans, restaurant and bars, $28.6 billion for that. You have grants that will be activated, shuttered venue operators grants, $1.25 billion as relates to that. There's many different things that's in this package that can help our people, our businesses directly, and we, the city, will make sure that we stand up the necessary resources to do some hand-holding if necessary to get our people through the process as we've demonstrated. So making sure, again, through this this command task force, will be, again, working effectively and collectively to meet our people where they are, giving them the information that they need, resources as well.
No other questions.
Okay, thank you all so much.